Is it time already? Miranda could feel her voice shaking as she asked a question, and only got silence for an answer. She was standing in the middle of the living room of this small beachfront property, feeling alone and abandoned. Well, there was no one beside her here. At least, no one living, for now. She asked again as she moved through the bungalow until she found the bedroom with the floor-length mirror. Is it time? Miranda asked once more, while looking at her own reflection pleadingly. There was a shadow moving behind her, hardly more than a wisp at first, before her mirror self started to slowly shake her head. It was still disturbing, looking at her own reflection and seeing it move independently. Almost as bad as the first time, even though she had lived with this thing for almost a year already. How long then? How much time do I have? The reflection seemed to freeze for a moment. Her dark eyes lowered and stared down at the floor before slowly wandering up again. The left hand of the reflection raised up, but then stopped at shoulder height before the woman in the mirror started putting her thumb and pointer almost completely together. Not long. Very short. Miranda sighed. Shouldn't we move again then? I mean, as long as we know, we can stay ahead, right? Her reflection looked at her with this strange sadness in her eyes as she slowly moved her head from side to side. The intention was clear. She didn't have much time anymore, and running away was no longer an option. Miranda felt the shivers moving through her body and hugged herself to keep her hands from shaking too much. Her reflection looked at her without moving an inch. How much time? A day? Less? She could see her mirror self nodding softly and felt the hair on her arms standing up. That close, huh? It was a completely useless question. One she only asked to say anything at all and not let the silence set in again. The reflection gave her a weak smile. Miranda breathed out slowly. She felt sick and scared and wanted to do nothing but turn around and run away. Along the beach until she couldn't even see this bungalow anymore. But that wouldn't be a smart move. Her reflection, no, the thing she had made the contract with had told her as much, and Miranda had agreed. She couldn't spend the rest of her life running away, looking over her shoulder everywhere she went. If she wanted to do that, she wouldn't have needed to make a deal with this strange being. Honestly, I don't feel ready, Miranda whispered, and could see the expression on her face in the mirror, softening. The thing gave her a weak smile. Well, it wasn't like she would ever feel that it was the right time, she knew. Allison was coming here, would arrive soon, and this 1 year of hide and seek would come to an end. She shivered at the thought and felt tears clouding her vision. Why couldn't she just leave her alone? Just let her be. No. That wasn't how things worked when Allison was involved. She had told her when they first met. When she found something she liked, she got it. Once she got it, she didn't let it go. Miranda felt bile shooting up and into her throat. How could she have been this naive? They had married 3 years ago, almost to the day, and those had been the worst years of her life. Constant supervision, constant threats and insults and pain and violence. Alison's sick and twisted version of love had almost killed her, had brought her to a point where she had contemplated ending it herself. Because, as Alison had told her, there was nowhere she could run to where she wouldn't be found. Nothing she could do besides crawl back. She shivered and tasted the first hint of bile on her tongue. Alison. The real monster. Born rich and powerful and completely without a conscience. She'd been her favorite plaything. And now, after managing to hide from her for almost a year, Alison would never let her go again. For all Miranda knew, she would put her into some kind of prison and throw away the key. The shaking got worse and worse. Are you absolutely sure she's coming here? There was hope in her voice, but the reflection dashed it in an instant by closing her eyes and nodding just once. Miranda didn't know if she should laugh or cry. The only thing in this world still on her side was some kind of being that should probably be called a demon. No one else noticed or cared enough to help her. She had no one. I'm gonna lie down a bit, if that's okay. Miranda whispered and could see the reflection nodding. Alison was on her way, but she still had time. Enough to at least rest her body, even if her mind wouldn't get any respite from it. She turned and let herself fall onto the bed as the first loud sob left her. Why? That was one of the questions that she always came back to. Why her? Well, according to Alison, she had caught her eye while standing behind the counter of a small boutique. Yeah. But why had this damned woman been at that place at that time? Was it really just chance? Or was this some fucked up form of fate? Miranda wept and pulled her legs up to her chest. Why hadn't she just said no, as Alison had asked her out the first time? Was it just because of the way the woman carried herself? This strange but seemingly unshakable confidence. Or the money? Or nothing more than the attention she had craved? Miranda bit her lower lip until the pain stopped the tears. Would it even have made a difference if she'd said no? She had already caught Alison's attention by that point, so... Child. A strange voice reached her ears, but Miranda didn't scream or move. This was it. The point between being awake and asleep, where she could hear the thing from the mirror. Just rest now. We have a contract, and I will keep you safe. All you need to do is follow my voice. She could feel her breath slowing down. Everything will be all right. I will not let her hurt you anymore. Just do as I told you. Even in this state, Miranda knew that that was a lie. It wasn't like the thing from the mirror could protect her in the real world. All it could do was show itself to her and talk to her like this. It reminded her of the first time she had noticed its presence. Lying in Allison's big apartment on the far-too-big bed, crying her eyes out. 1.5 years ago. After the honeymoon phase had ended. After she had lost all her friends, her relatives, her support. She still cursed herself for letting it all happen. But back then, she hadn't realized it in time. Slowly, with what now looked like every passing day, Allison had systematically isolated her. Had made her lose her job, started spats with her friends and then hid behind her. Slowly pushed them all away. Deleted contacts from her phone, faked messages. Slowly but steadily, one person after the other had left her, until one day, Miranda realized that the only one she was still talking to, the only living being still with her, was Allison. And from that moment on, real hell had begun. Because that was Allison's plan. Her favorite joy in life. Total and absolute control. Soon after, she had stopped even pretending to be in love with her. It was cruel. She was cruel, mentally and physically. It all was just a game to her. Sending her out with a cancelled credit card, insulting and demeaning her in front of strangers, hurting and scaring her at home. She'd been starved, kept awake and drugged, and there had been nothing she could have done about that. Miranda had found herself completely trapped. No hope in sight. At least, until one day, while lying on the big bed, holding her stomach, she suddenly heard that same voice. A quiet one, hardly more than a whisper at first. Miranda thought she had lost her mind, of course. It had been after a week of almost constant torture. Never before in her life had she dreaded the future as much as back then. Never before had she honestly thought about giving up. Her sobs, muffled by her own pillow, had stopped, though, when she had realized what that strange voice was telling her. Do not give up. That had been the first thing this strange being had told her. It had repeated it again and again. How strange it had felt, hearing those words, while every part of herself had wanted to do just that. But the voice had insisted. It followed her into her dreams, told her to keep going, that there was still a way to save herself. And in her sleep, she had seen it. Its real form. A shadow flittering about, hunting for something. But not for her. At least, that was what it claimed. And Miranda believed it. If it had wanted to hurt her, it could have simply stayed away. Allison would have broken her completely soon anyway. But it had reached out to her. When she woke up again, she had seen it in the mirror for the first time. Something that manipulated her reflection. The tired face that had stared out at her had given her a sad smile, and Miranda decided then and there that she would put her trust in the being. After all, it was the only thing Allison couldn't poison against her. The only one that wanted her to go on. Even through the mockery and pain that followed, Miranda had gritted her teeth and endured it all. 'Cause, in her dreams, the thing had spoken to her again. It had promised her her freedom, and in less than 2 weeks, this entity had delivered. Getting into Alison's safe was easy, after the thing told her the combination. Evading the guards as well, once the demon had informed her about their routes and schedules. It had stayed by her side when she had taken a taxi, had talked to her through the next steps, when she had fallen asleep on the plane, and even now, in the small bungalow, it was still with her. This thing had become her support, her friend. Every night for the whole past year when she went to bed, the thing had welcomed her. Miranda would have never imagined that she would ever be able to fall asleep without dreading it again, but the demon had made sure to keep the nightmares at bay. Only now, with the money running low and Alison hot on her heels, had the thing told her that it was time. She would need to face her here. The voice set in again and talked to her, while Miranda seemed to float in space. What would she do after the stuff with Alison was over? She had thought about that time and time again, but had never come to a real conclusion. Could she go back to her family and friends? Would they even talk to her again? She knew that Alison had taken her phone and sent them nasty messages before blocking everything and even deleting her accounts. Some of them would listen to her, she promised herself. No matter what Alison had told her, she was worth being loved. If only one person could still be reached. But then again, she would need to survive first. Alison was coming, and she would be mad. Miranda had seen it before. That side of her. This viciousness and cruelty. There was no doubt about it that this time she would be even worse. Far more brutal, far more vindictive than she had ever seen her. Because Miranda had dared to run away. And she knew all too well now. People like Alison hated having their toys stolen. She could hear herself whimpering, at the voice of the thing trying to calm her back down. This fear she felt at the mere mention of the name was like a weight, dragging her down into the pit of despair. How should she handle her? Should she just stay standing, cross her arms in front of her chest and not react? Memories rushed back to her. She had tried that, and it had gotten her nowhere. The pain was pretty much all she remembered from that day. Alison had told her that she would beat any defiance out of her, and she had pretty much succeeded.
You managed to run away on your own, Miranda.
The voice chimed in.
You are strong. You can do this.
She could feel herself getting restless. Her eyelids were fluttering.
Just keep calm and follow the plan.
The voice seemed to scream from far away, just as Miranda opened her eyes and found herself still lying on the bed. Her hands were shaking, and she felt her heartbeat up in her head. Alison would soon arrive, she whispered in her thoughts, and the mention of the name made the shaking worse. Every part of her begged her to stand up and run away. She could get at least a bit of a head start that way, and maybe Alison would soon lose interest in her. No, that was complete crap. She wouldn't let her go. Never. The demon's plan was her only option now. It hadn't lied to her yet, and when it told her that this would be the spot where she would have to face her, it had done so knowing that Miranda wouldn't be able to escape much longer anyway. This here was her last stand, she mumbled, and pushed her feet off the bed. But a weapon wouldn't be required. If she was honest with herself, she knew she wouldn't be able to shoot Allison, and pulling a gun on her would be a surefire way to make her even madder. The demon had told her as much as well. It wasn't part of the plan, so Miranda hadn't even bothered thinking about getting a weapon. She started walking through the bungalow and felt a cold chill in the air. Why had the demon directed her to come here exactly? It hadn't told her everything, she knew, but didn't feel like she was in a position to even ask. Whatever it wanted to do, it had to happen here. She walked past the other small rooms, 2 for children on her right side, a bathroom on the left, and into the living room with the glass door. The view of the beach, so close, yet also somehow far away, made her calm down a bit. This here seemed like an ideal spot to take one's family to, maybe for an extended vacation. And it had been dirt cheap as well. Why? Maybe something had happened here? It felt ominous, if she was honest. She couldn't help but smile as she slowly opened the glass door and looked out into the world. Grey clouds were covering the sky, but not a single drop of rain had fallen yet. Not knowing how long it would take Allison to get here made her queasy. Her, well, legally speaking, wife would probably ambush her, not announcing her own presence beforehand. And the fact that she was standing around and waiting for it to happen made her break out in cold sweats. A soft breeze cooled her down as she started listening to the waves quietly crashing onto the beach. It was calm out there, beautiful. She looked over at the strangely dark cliffs on the side of the property, where the waves crashed against the stone with unbridled rage. The atmosphere out here was so strange. It felt like a storm was sneaking up on her. She didn't know when it would hit, only that it would be bad. Miranda shivered again, then took a step outside. The smell of the ocean hit her nose now with full force, and she could feel herself taking a deep breath. If she could, she would like to stay in a place like this, at least for a few weeks. It seemed like a paradise to her right now. No one was around. She didn't feel this dreadful fear she had experienced almost throughout the whole last year. The anxiety of Allison hiding behind every corner, passing her by, and looking out from every car. Hearing footsteps outside the motels and immediately feeling her chest getting tighter and the sweat starting to build on her skin. But she also knew that this peace here was even more of an illusion. She was coming. Was already on her way here. Soon, she would have to come face to face with her and pray that the demon didn't just intend to torture her with a year of freedom, only to watch as she got dragged back. Miranda could feel her lip quivering at the thought. No, it wouldn't turn out like that. She had no proof, of course, but still had to cling to the hope that the thing she had made a deal with wouldn't fuck her over like that. Dying would be better than whatever Allison had in store for her if she ever got dragged back. Miranda turned around and walked back inside, then closed and locked the glass door. She could still hear the waves crashing onto the beach outside, but now it felt different, like someone counting down the seconds. A shiver crawled up her spine, and she shook her head. Right now, she couldn't do anything but wait, and the only room she felt even a tiny bit safe in was the bedroom with the mirror. Her friend would be there, with her. Miranda walked back through the house and could see her reflection moving strangely every time she passed by anything with a smooth and shiny surface. First, she visited the front door and made sure it was locked as well, then walked toward the bedroom. Her heartbeat was faster than usual, Miranda realized. Her mouth was dry, and her fingers were picking at the hem of her shirt. She was nervous, far too nervous for such a place. A cruel, humorless smile tugged at her lips. No, she thought. This place here wasn't a happy one. At least not now. Miranda entered the bedroom and closed the door behind her. She could almost see herself in the mirror, and somehow she dreaded what her reflection would now show her. The thing would probably tell her to calm down. Or maybe it would now grin at her from ear to ear, knowing that it had managed to make her trap herself in this bungalow. No, she whispered and shook her head. Miranda rested her back against the closed door and tried to breathe calmly. She was getting paranoid, already suspecting everything around her. The thing wouldn't do that, right? They had made a deal, a contract. Still, she could feel her heart beating hard enough to hurt her ribs as she opened her eyelids again and took a step forward. Slight wisps of black smoke seemed to build behind her reflection, and the eyes staring out at her from the mirror suddenly narrowed. Miranda could feel her fingernails digging into the hem of her shirt. This cold chill in the air seemed to freeze the sweat on her brow. For a single moment, she was sure that she had just walked into a trap of her own free will. It would abandon her, just like everyone else had done. Her friends, her family. She would get picked up by Allison, dragged back to that dreadful apartment. Or worse, her life would be over. Miranda quickly bit her lower lip to keep it from quivering, and stopped as the features of the face staring out at her softened. There was this sad, mournful expression on its face that made her forget everything else. It looked like it might start to cry as well. Miranda felt her legs shaking as she saw it, then completely froze as a single noise reached her ear through the sound of the waves and wind outside. A footstep. Not quick, not heavy, but definitely one made by a person. The reflection sat down on the bed and showed her to do the same. Miranda followed suit. It was happening. She knew. Her heart was beating out of control. She felt cold and hot at the same time. Allison was here. Miranda's reflection raised one finger up to the lips. Quiet. She listened closely to her surroundings. The footsteps were moving. They were coming around the small house. Miranda could feel the blood freezing in her veins. She wanted to jump up and start running, but the thing controlling her reflection had told her otherwise. Some part of her mind screamed not to trust it, but Miranda ignored it. She wouldn't have come this far if it hadn't helped her. Now it was her turn to fulfill her part of the deal. With now closed eyes, she continued listening. It almost sounded like the footfalls were getting quieter. moving farther away. Miranda didn't dare to hope. There was no doubt about it in her mind. It was her, Allison. She had come here, followed her, and found her. Slowly, Miranda opened her eyes and looked at her reflection again. It wasn't smiling, didn't seem giddy or ecstatic or anything the like. That thing looked sad and tense. I'll do as we planned, Miranda whispered, then almost fell from the bed as the unmistakable sound of the glass door getting pulled open reached her ears. She'd locked it, right? Had Allison learned how to pick a lock? That was completely unthinkable. Miranda stood up and watched a reflection of herself, still sitting on the bed looking up at her with a pained smile. It nodded, and she took a deep breath as she turned away from the mirror. Her heart was racing, and she felt sick to her stomach, but Miranda also knew that hiding in here wouldn't help her anymore. She had to face her demons. A breeze stroked her cheek as she made her way through the house. Someone had left one of the doors open, her mind warned her, and she felt the urge to run away only getting stronger. If she raced towards the front door, she could slip outside before Allison would catch her. Some part of her promised. No. She wouldn't make it far. Allison had help. She always did. Miranda reached the open door to the living room and completely froze. There, sitting at the dark wooden table, the one person she dreaded most of all sat, smiling brightly while looking over at her.
Hi, honey.
A voice as cold as ice greeted, and Miranda could feel her legs buckling. In this one moment, she felt just like she had that day on the bed. This despair, the pain and the fear. She couldn't even open her mouth. The woman stood up without another moment's hesitation and rounded the table, heading straight for her. Miranda looked on in horror. She seemed happy, but the smile didn't reach her eyes. And there she could see the rage and anger burning already.
Aren't you gonna say hi to your wife?
The words sounded like a mockery, but Miranda clung to the frame of the door to keep herself from falling over.
Did you miss me during your little adventure?
Miranda could feel a growl building in her throat. With every sentence she spoke, the tone of her voice got more threatening. This was exactly as she had thought it would go. Allison reached her, put a hand out, and touched her cheek. Miranda jerked back instinctively, which instantly wiped the smile off of the woman's face. She came even closer, as if she wanted to hug her, then put a hand around her shoulder and whispered right into her ear.
I don't know why you did it, but did you really think I would let you leave like that? Stealing from me? Have you completely lost your mind?
Miranda tried to step back, but a hand held her firmly in place. Her tormentor wasn't joking around, and her body reacted just like all the times before, trembling passively while waiting for the pain to start.
You will be coming back with me now. Don't even think about running off again. I have 4 guys around the place, and all of them are only here to take you down.
She could feel the hot breath on her earlobe, then heard the gnashing of teeth. Her legs were almost buckling as the woman put another hand around her and pulled her up.
You are mine. Understood?
Miranda felt the quivering of her lips stop. She had lived just fine before Allison had come into her life. She had even survived after she'd run away. Although with help, she had to admit. She could see herself in the glass of the picture hanging at her side. Her reflection wasn't crying, wasn't shaking. All she did was growl and nod. It was time to hold up her part of the deal. Miranda screamed as she pulled back her head and then slammed it forward. Her forehead connected with Allison's cheek, and for the first time ever, she heard the other woman cry in pain. The hands left her shoulders, and Miranda turned and ran. She didn't come far. Fingers found her hair and brutally yanked her back before she could even take a second step. Miranda almost fell to the floor, but kept herself upright by grabbing hold of the wall. She screamed and kicked as the other woman began to shout. Strands of hair were ripped out of her skull as her tormentor pulled again, but she didn't register the pain. All she knew was that she needed to go back.
You fucking bitch!
Allison's voice thundered behind her. Miranda knew that she needed to make her angry. That was part of the deal. One last time, she would need to endure it. She reached the door to the bedroom. Suddenly, someone pushed her from behind. Miranda screamed in shock as she stumbled and fell to the floor. Two hands grabbed her by the shoulders, pulled her up, then slammed her back down. Her head connected with the floor. She could feel a sharp pain in her nose, then heard herself screaming. Again and again, she lifted her up, only to slam her back down. And all the while, she could hear it. The insults, the heavy breathing, the threats coming from the woman above her. Miranda could see stars dancing in front of her eyes, felt herself getting rolled over, and then two hands on her throat before she even realized what was happening. Allison's face was above her, growling and snarling while more and more insults dripped from her lips. She wanted to kill her, Miranda realized. This unbridled hate in her eyes told her as much. Her throat was closed as she tried to cry for help, while the woman above her still spewed out threats and insults. Miranda tried to struggle, but her vision blurred already. Darkness seemed to encroach on her. She turned her head slightly and looked at the mirror. There she was, her reflection on the floor, smiling softly. Did it want to kill her after all? She had kept up her end of the deal. Her eyelids flickered as she looked up again. Allison was so close. Her anger was palpable. The fingernails dug into the skin of her throat as her tormentor lowered her head until their noses almost touched.
You ungrateful bitch,
she hissed as Miranda saw a shadow in the white of Allison's eye. It was hardly more than a wisp, but she knew it well enough. Her vision got blurry. She felt her lungs burning, her own hands uselessly scratching the arms of the woman above her. Miranda still tried to scream, then suddenly heard an ear-piercing shout and wondered how she could still have the strength to do this. The hands around her throat disappeared, and air streamed into her lungs as she started to cough. Through the curtain of tears in her eyes, she could see Allison throwing back her head as shadows moved around her. The weight of the woman kneeling on her disappeared as well, and Miranda rolled over, still fighting to breathe. She felt hot and cold. Her mouth opened and snapped shut without her meaning to do so. And all the while, the woman who had tormented her for so long screamed in agony and fright. Someone broke open the front door as more shouts echoed back from outside. People were coming. She wanted. Miranda spat on the floor with spurts of her own blood mixed with the saliva. She couldn't do anything. Her lungs were still burning, and her throat seemed ready to collapse in on itself any moment now. But the thing that somehow caught her attention was the silence coming from Allison. She had stopped screaming. Heavy boots were thundering through the house as people clad in black stormed the room, weapons at the ready. Miranda could hardly raise her head. They looked like shadows standing there. She tried to move, then would have screamed if her throat was still able to work, as someone grabbed her by the shoulder and yanked her up. The touch was well known, and she felt her knees almost buckling. But the hand still held her and pulled her to her feet. Allison was standing next to her, now smiling from ear to ear, and Miranda wanted to cry.
It's okay, Miranda.
She heard the voice, and suddenly her eyes flew open. This tone, it was wrong. Far too soft. She looked closer and could see the strange darkness behind the eyes of her tormentor. Her smile was bright and open.
I think we did rather well.
Miranda could see her nodding toward the side of the room and followed with her eyes. There was the mirror, but next to her own reflection, she could now see Allison, not standing there calmly like in the real world, but screaming silently while raising her hands. Miranda couldn't help but stare until one arm got slung over her shoulder. She was softly and cautiously pulled along.
A deal is a deal, right? No. Where do you want to go?
The men dressed in black shot each other looks, but followed wordlessly. Miranda smiled as the hand holding her up stroked her cheek, and her eyes wandered back to the mirror one last time. Allison was screaming in there. Tears were streaming down her face. She was crying in her prison. Miranda felt laughter building in her throat. She chuckled and let the thing beside her guide her out of the room.